Welcome to Your Intended Message, the perfect place for leaders and promising professionals who want to convey the intended message for greater success. Every week, we interview experts who can help you communicate more effectively, whether that's one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. And perhaps the most important conversation, one-to-self. I'm your host, George Torok. My guest today is Patricia Fripp. I'm delighted to welcome her back for another interview, another conversation. This time we're going to talk about the power of sales presentations and how you can improve them. Here's 3 facts that you should know about Patricia when it comes to sales presentation. 1, in 2019, Patricia was named one of the top 25 women in sales. 2, at the same time, she was also one of the top 30 global coaching gurus. And 3, it's important for you to know that companies hire Patricia Fripp to increase sales by perfecting their important conversations and presentations. Patricia Fripp, welcome back to Your Intended Message.
Always a pleasure to help salespeople focus on their intended sales message.
And there's no question that salespeople do need help delivering their messages. It gets more competitive all the time. When companies hire you to work with their sales teams, what surprises have you run into when you start working with them? Or are you still surprised?
Okay. What surprises me most is that companies spend a fortune making their salespeople aware of all their technology. They get all the technical skills they need. Then all the product knowledge they know. They need to know about their company and the competitors. They give them a great contact management system, how to organize their territory, how to prospect, and what you would say surprise, I would say drives me crazy and horrifies me. They don't spend any time or investment in, now you finally got the conversation. What do you say that makes your message more powerful, personable, and persuasive than your competition? So, a perfect example, George. And this really launched me into sales presentation training. I'd written a special report, which we can give to our listeners. In those days, it was the 12 biggest mistakes. We've narrowed it down to 11 biggest mistakes, but the 12 biggest mistakes the salespeople make in their presentations. Shelley Seeger downloaded it, read it, picked up the phone and said, Patricia, I work at a technology company and we only hire seasoned technology sales professional, at least 10 years experience in the industry. We naturally assumed they could tell our company message. And then one day they all had to present to our leadership and we were horrified. I have been charged to scour the globe to find the best sales presentation skills company in the universe. They were her exact words. We're so lucky you're only 34 miles from headquarters. And that was when I was in charge of day 1 of a 5-day sales meeting for new hires from all over the world. And our first step, and this is a process that I do now, even more elevated. Shelley delivered the message that all the salespeople really should be telling. We transcribed it rewrote it, editing down 200 words, made it more personable, specific. And one of my young associates, who I brought in, who'd been an actor, he learned it, and we went and we presented it to the leadership. And one of the national sales managers said, I have never heard anyone deliver our corporate message better than that. And our point was, we don't even know what we're talking about. We just took your message and made it better. If we can learn it, don't you think we can teach it to your new hires? And that was the amazing part. And even now, I help very technical salespeople improve their presentations, George, because it doesn't matter what you're selling. There are some basic premises that are universal.
And what are those?
Well, the first is the old way of selling doesn't work.
The old way
Hi,
meaning...
I'm Patricia Fripp. I work with the ABC company. We've been in business for 45 years, and we are leaders, and we have this special whammo-zammo technology, and this is who we do business with, and we would love to add you to our list to satisfy clients.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to know more about us?
Yeah. Nobody cares. So one, you know, and of course, fast forward 20 years from those first conversations with Shelley, life has changed. If you are lucky to get a presentation on the calendar of a seasoned senior level group, one, you've already probably somebody else had vetted 10 companies and you're now down to 3. They know about you. What they are concerned about is them, their problems, their challenges, their opportunities. So what I teach all my sales clients to say is, by the time you get there, and you know, it's a process. The first time you're delivering a formal presentation, even if it's online, you're having a web presentation, you've got some information, you've talked to somebody. And I recommend you work on one principle. They are more interested in themselves than they are in you. So very simply, it would be congratulations. Because one, if you're on their agenda, someone's introduced you or your name is on the agenda, and I don't care if they don't know your name, they just know this is someone from ABC company, you still don't have to start with I'm Patricia Fripp. Start with congratulations and then mention some aspect that they have a right to be proud of. It could be, your advertising campaign is spectacular. Your website is so user-friendly. It was so obvious. Or your client references are the best in your industry. Your stock price has just gone up 2 points and your major competitors, I notice, has gone down. It could be, if it's in person, as simple as everybody who met me in the hall on my way to the conference room said good morning, asked if I need help. Obviously, your core values are alive and well. I don't care what it is. It has to be specific. It's welcome. Then, point 1 in all my sales presentation skills training, if you sound the same as everybody else, you have no advantage. So one, chances are, unless they've been Fripp trained, they're not going to say congratulations with a specific. Then, you never thank people for their time. Everybody thanks them for the time. No. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss how the Fripp presentation skills training may be what you're looking for. And then you might say, in case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, because some might, or you might say, I'm Patricia Fripp. And in my role as your account executive. Now, this is subtle, George. When we have live presentations, I often ask the audience, Do you rent cars? Yeah. Do you take them to the car wash before you return them? No, of course not. It's not my car. They're going to do that. This is the point. We look after what is ours more than what we rent or we hire. So even before you have the job, talk about, in my role as your sales associate, I am responsible for confirming or whatever you're going to say. Now it's subtle because you don't have the job yet, but there's something about I'm yours. You're not going to give me quite such a hard time as you have the last two companies. Then you say, after you introduce yourself, you say, thank you for John and Mary. To John and Mary, they have been very generous with their time and information, and they tell me that your major priorities are your challenges, your opportunities, or what you're most interested in is. Is this correct? Is there anything else you would like to add to our discussion? So now the structure of your presentation, rather than this is who we are, this is how long we've been in business, this is what we do, it is your, whether it's an opportunity, challenge, or problem, whatever their words are, you use. Because, as I teach my clients, your prospects will never disagree with themselves. So you're going to use the words that they used in your conversation. So it's your first opportunity or your first challenge. Let's say your first challenge is this. And then you say, am I correct? Is there any more details you want to add to that? And then you'll say, this reminds me of our client, a 200-person manufacturing firm in Cleveland. And just like you, they manufacture this, or that's why all salespeople need good sales examples, because you're answering the questions. You're answering your prospects' unasked questions, which is, if we say yes to you, what is this going to look like? And they might say, tell us about your company. That isn't what they want to know. Tell us how your company will help us. And so you are talking about your company, but from the point of view of the case histories and how you solve their problems. So this is your first challenge. Well, as you're probably aware, in our 46-year history, this is a challenge that all our clients have. For example, in your industry is this. Well, what we did with the manufacturing company as Cleveland is what we would recommend would be probably a logical approach to you. We would first analyze this, collaborate with, and then make a presentation and do this. Does that make sense to you? Then your second challenge is, now this is very different from the company in Cleveland. However, this is how we'd approach it. And perhaps you're familiar with such and such who is in your industry. You might have noticed on our website, they gave us a rave review. Okay, so you're just restructuring your presentation. As I say to my clients, if they're asking for a demo or whatever your next step is, does it matter if you haven't told them how long you've been in business?
Doesn't matter. Who cares? Who cares?
Exactly. So the biggest mistakes people make is, one, not structuring the presentation around what interests the prospect, and two, not beginning with the congratulations about them, which immediately proves we've done our research. We are focused on you. We are working hard to earn your business. Can you imagine how hard we're going to earn to satisfy and keep it? So much of this is psychology. It's not only your intended message, George, is not only the words that you use, but the psychology and the subtext of how your intended message lands with your listeners.
This sounds very much like the process of building a relationship, more than trying to make a sale. So this is not someone who's coming that approach. A salesperson come with that approach. If you're on the receiving end, you're thinking, oh, this person isn't trying to sell me something. They actually have done some research. They're trying to establish rapport here, and they already recognize the advancements, the successes we've had. Maybe I should listen to the rest of the presentation.
My most frequent retweeted Frippicism, and I noticed from 2 different people yesterday, it was quoted on LinkedIn, giving Patricia Fripp full credit. And this very simply is, don't celebrate closing a sale. Celebrate opening a relationship.
Powerful. Powerful.
And this approach, George, that we are discussing proves I'm interested in a relationship. I'm interested in you, and I'm using case histories of satisfied clients just like you.
Rehearsal. Tell us about the importance of rehearsal, the challenges, and the best approach.
I was brought in to train a company in Portland. Now, this was a company that managed the pension plans for large organizations. And the people I was coaching were the people that once they made the sale, they went in and they gave presentations to explain how you work with our system, etc. Well, some of the salespeople heard I was there, so the national sales manager and 2 of the sales team sat into my session. And the national sales manager came back after lunch on the second day and stood up and said, the sales team and I decided we have absolutely no idea how we managed to sell anything until we met Patricia. So I asked him about his process, and this was one of the cases. It took a year to develop the relationship that led them into the meeting. And if they got a yes, George, it would be worth $20 million in the next 5 years. So I asked him, as a matter of interest, it took you a year to get these presentations. How long do you rehearse? Now, what I expected him to say is, George, what you would expect him to say. Well, the week before we deliver it, we bring in some of our associates. We go through our presentation. They ask really tough questions that we really don't want to answer. We review that. We do it again with another group. We do this 5 times. We analyze, we rehearse. And we are ready as if it's the opening of a Broadway performance. That's what I expected. What he actually said is, if we have a run through in the back of Gillian's car before we walk in, we're lucky. It's like, this is a big company. This employs thousands of people. And you don't know that if you got, how much money have you invested in a year of relationships and processes and research for this meeting, and then you don't rehearse? It's a wonder anyone does sell anything.
Patricia, why do you think, and I've run into that too, and it blows me away, why do you think people fail to rehearse such an important message, such an important conversation?
Cockiness. They think I've been doing this 20 years, I can wing it.
Why should I rehearse? I'm good.
And you know, good is the enemy of great. Great is the enemy of world class. Because, and what I do, when I often if I'm talking to someone, the first conversation, if they're talking about sales presentations, my first question usually is, well, as a matter of interest, and this is a good process for anyone, how come you're calling? You know, were you referred, or am I the end of a search? And as long as I've been in business, it amazes me how often it's just a search. They're not looking for me, they're looking for a problem to be solved. And I say, as a matter of interest, well, what were you searching? Often people can't remember how they began, but it's something to do with sales presentations. I say, well, you know, you're a busy person. Why were you searching for sales presentation training? And I often hear a version of, we just lost a really big sale that we thought we deserved to make. And if I may ask, how big is that sale? No matter what it is, I say, ooh, that must hurt. And then, if I may ask, is that a big sale, a little sale, an average sale? How many people on your sales force? I'm just having an idea of how much and what is your statistics? And sometimes I hear, well, we close 1 in 3. I said, well, that's really good. And then as we're going longer in the conversation, and they said, well, this sounds good. What would this cost? I said, well, let's put into, before we discuss the investment, let's put in the context one lost sale that they began the conversation with, or you close 1 out of 3 presentations and the average sale is $50,000. Now, what if we could increase it to 1.5 sales out of 3? What would that be worth? And this is well, one, I'm pathetic with math. I can't do it that fast. I say, but the secret is, you always want your prospect, whatever you're selling, to do the math. How much is it costing them to solve their problem, or to not have the service or product that you can sell them?
Now, when it's interesting when it comes to rehearsal and the importance, and people say, well, I don't have time to rehearse, or I'm really good. But as an example, let's talk about your brother, Robert Fripp, who was a founder of King Crimson, who was rated by Rolling Stone magazine in the top 50 guitarists in the world.
Yeah.
I believe he's still playing.
Oh yes.
Well,
and even when he's on tour, George, he gets up, he has his breakfast, he has his normal, organizes the set list for the evening, because they don't play the same songs every night, not in the same order. And part of this is he never wants his band members to be complacent. So they don't know till they go theater in what order they're playing their songs or which ones they're having. It's never exactly the same. And then he practices. Then he goes to the theater, he'll practice in his dressing room. When he comes home, he practices, because he plays the guitar really fast. He says you have to keep the muscle memory in your hands. Well, you and I know, George, if I remember in the heyday of my speaking career, 1 month, I delivered 23 presentations. And people said, wow, you must be exhausted. I say, my timing is perfect. You don't give a speech for 6 weeks. You need to be a bit more rehearsal just to get in the flow of how it goes. And I don't care if you've been speaking for 20, 30 years. So there is a certain muscle memory. And if you have an opportunity that is that big, you're not given these presentations very often. Maybe if you're lucky, you give 1 a month, which means you really need to have a run through and rehearsal, especially in a lot of these presentations. It's a team presentation. In other words, you know, there are 3 different people and you're setting it up and someone's doing a demo. Now, for any of our audience who delivers product demos, I work a lot with the salespeople that bring in the technical people who understand the technology. And the line that I always give them, and I've had wonderful little technical people all over the world said, I used the line, and they laughed. They loved it. So, the salesperson does the presentation, then Omar is now going to demonstrate. So Omar puts their hands on the screen and brings up. And what I always say is, look at your audience before you look down at your keyboard and say, sit back and be amazed. And then show them. Because they'll laugh, which is, and you know yourself, George, when anyone is passionate about this subject or their offering, it's contagious. And if someone's demoing software, and they're obviously excited about it, even if that's the only speaking role they have till they answer questions, give them a good line to say.
That's a fabulous line, Patricia. And what it reminds me of is the Steve Jobs line of, I have 1,000 songs in my pocket.
Exactly. And the point, this is just like the taglines of great commercials. Where's the beef? How many years has that been? I mean, it's amazing. That is a whole speech or a sermon in a sentence.
Let's talk about the power of words. And unfortunately, too many people are sloppy with their language, or they just don't believe that the words are important. Tell us the mistakes you see people making with their words and what you offer to them instead.
I am known for one very important phrase, which I, of course, learned from one of my mentors over 20 years ago. Specificity builds credibility. The world is full of sloppy speakers. What I always ask my clients more than any other is, if it weren't a thing, what would it be? Perfect example with these brilliant engineers that I work with.
People that keep saying things.
Yes, and I said to the brilliant engineer, if they weren't things, what would they be? He said, innovative upgrades. And so it's never a thing, it's more valuable. And it's just a matter of, I am surprised how many leaders and really good sales professionals talk about sort of or kind of. I said, no, black and white. And it's never about. Nobody's going to argue. They weren't there. It wasn't about 6 or 7 years. No, 7 years ago. Be specific. Tighten up your language. And always, one of my clients, her favorite word, which I have now cured, I was saying, Shelley, you understand, Michelle, when we work with the coaching of the sales presentations, there's a limit to how many people we get on their feet and coach. However, it's unlimited how many people watch us, getting ready for when they're delivering these presentations. She said, what a great idea, because Greg just hired a boatload of new people. And I said, Michelle, was it a dinghy or an ocean liner? Because we use words to communicate, George. We use words to communicate, but our intended message, a lot of that is visual. I don't know what size boat it is. So I said, Michelle, how many people? She said 4. Now I said, what's wrong with saying, great idea, Greg just hired 4 new people. There'd be plenty of room to have them sit in the back of the room. Just be specific. It's not bunches unless it's fruit. It's not tons if you can't weigh it. And if it doesn't go to sea, it's not a boatload.
I've heard you preach about the power, the difference of I versus you. What does that mean?
Working on the principle that everyone's more interested in themselves than you, it is not possible to speak without saying I. However, if we can focus our message to be more you focused, people will be more in tune with our message. Very often when I'm working with teams, I say, do you have some standard letters that you send out? And I know I was working with one realtor. I saw that you were selling your house. You had a sign for sale by owner, and I'm a local realtor, and I know the industry very well. So although I know you want to sell it yourself, perhaps we should have a conversation. Okay. I said, why don't you try a slightly different approach? Just last week, I was driving down your street and saw your beautiful garden and magnificent home. Naturally, I noticed your sales by owner, and of course, that is one perfectly good choice. However, if you were to talk to some of your neighbors, including this address and this address, you'll find that having a local expert who understands your community well not only will finance the marketing of your property, blah, 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 blah. So in other words, you make it a story, but again, just as with your presentation, you make a story out of how I know. It's more you focused than I focused.
Now that's interesting, Patricia. When you lead with the story, we're less defensive. We're more likely to listen and start seeing the story, playing the story in our head, and therefore we're more likely to go with what comes next.
And if you remember, it doesn't matter what culture we were raised in, George. As little children, we all heard our version in different languages of clean your teeth, put on your jammies, get into bed, mummy, daddy, auntie, uncle, grandmother will come tell you a story. We don't realize, but anytime we hear anything that sounds like a story, we feel we are being rewarded. It's subtle. That is how storytelling in sales is very powerful. It's painting a picture. It's also the ability to tell a story about a happy customer. And there's another story technique in sales, and that is projecting the audience into the future. Naturally, as you know, I work a lot with technology companies, and anytime you have brand new technology or new computer system, it is frustrating. We love what we used to, and I'm exactly the same. Why did they have to upgrade this? I can't find where anything is now. I'm like everybody else. So what we have to do is say, George, imagine 3 months from now. When you come in and you sit at your office, you boot up your computer, and now then you paint a scene of what I see on the screen and what you can do and how simple. And you will be less frustrated in just doing your basic everyday tasks. You will save 2 hours a day for you to handle the higher priorities of your job, which are probably going to get you the promotion you deserve. So in other words, paint a picture of a beautiful future and then come back. Now, how are we going to get to that comfort and streamline? We're going to spend the next 3 days just better understanding the new upgrades. Understand it will be a little frustrating. However, I promise you, stick with it. And by the end of the week, you won't even remember the software or the system you were using before.
Patricia, for sales presenters out there who want to learn more, want to gain more, there are free resources on your site. That's fripp.com, Fripp with two P's.com. One of the resources we mentioned, the 11 biggest mistakes sales professionals make in their presentation. There's that, plus several other PDFs and ebooks there that they can download for free. They don't even have to put in their email. If they do want to receive regular newsletter from you, they can do that as well. And if they want to go even further, they want to make an investment in themselves, the next step is with Fripp VT. Tell us about that and what they get out of that.
Well, Fripp Virtual Training, Powerful Persuasive Presentations, the best of what I've learned in sales, presentations, and presentation skills in one system. There is a portion of just the sales content, Fripp VT Sales, and they can sign up for a free trial. And if they would like to reach out, which they can from my website, just says contact, and they can contact me. We're happy to give them a personal demo or have a conversation about improving their presentations. But as you say, there's plenty free. We also have 1,000 blog posts on sales and presentation skills.
And once again, Patricia Fripp has delighted to have you with again. Patricia has been a mentor, a teacher, and a coach to me on presentation skills. A lot to learn from her. Patricia, one last comment from you. If you have the chance to speak to a sales leader, and if you could give them 3 pieces of advice that would help them transform the success of their sales presentations, what might be those 3 pieces of advice?
Invest 10% that you did on product knowledge in presentation skills. Make presentation skills an important part of your weekly, bi-weekly sales meetings, whether they're virtual in person. And 3, put the pressure on. Most of us would agree it is more stressful presenting for your peers and your bosses than strangers, as in your customers. I would recommend that you spotlight at least 1 or 2 people at every single meeting to stand up and present to the group. I would also challenge you to have different salespeople research your major prospects and deliver a presentation as if you worked for one of your competitors. How do you think they sell against us? And of course, if you want an expert in presentation skills as it relates to sales, you now have a new best friend who is a sales presentation expert. Just reach out to fripp.com. We can have a conversation.
Thank you, Patricia. Definitely the best friend to those sales leaders who want to transform their presentation results. Patricia Fripp, delighted to have you with here. A lot of, I'm not going to say a boatload, I'm not going to say a ton, significant advice and powerful tools that you've allowed us today. Thank you for joining us on Your Intended Message.
If you like what you heard, remember to like, comment, and share this podcast. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you convey your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.